All rise. Please be seated. We're back on the record on case number 21-1038, Odum v. Frey. The record should reflect the presence of parties, counsel, all officers of the court, and the jury. The counsel stipulate to the proceeding of the jury.
So stipulate.
Yes, Your Honor.
Someone come back up on the stand. Mr. Busby, you may continue.
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Odum, I'm going to go through some of these photos that you talked earlier this morning about. Okay?
Okay.
And can you see them okay on your screen?
Yep.
All right, great. And so this is Exhibit 67, and you took this photo yourself?
Yes.
And what is it a photo of?
Amaranth plant.
Okay. And what, if we're looking at the Google Earth image of your backyard, and we start at your porch and then go walk all the way to the eastern boundary, where roughly is the amaranth planted?
It's planted somewhere around the middle.
Okay. And what is it that you are attempting to show in this photograph?
Well, it turned completely yellow there and it's got holes in it.
Okay.
And you can see that it's drooping and roughed up.
Okay. And what part of the amaranth plant is used for your when you sell it organically?
Well, I usually sell the leaves because it's like a summer spinach.
Okay.
And then you can also harvest the seeds on top, and I usually would harvest those, and you can make bread or you can feed them to the chickens.
Okay. So the leaves that we're looking at in this photo, they're green, kind of purplish colored leaves, and then there's some with some yellow as well?
Yes.
Okay. So the leaves are what are harvested by you and then sold at the farmer's market?
Yes.
Okay. And how do you sell the leaves? Like in a little bundle, like cilantro or something like that, or are they sold bulk in a bag? How do you sell
I
them?
harvest them and then I put them in a Ziploc bag.
Okay. And typically, what size unit of amaranth leaves do you sell at your farmer's market? Like a bag is how much?
It's what I grab and I put in there.
Okay, and then how much do you sell a bag for?
I believe those amaranth bags are $4.
$4 a bag?
Yeah,
Okay. And it's like a 1 gallon Ziploc?
it is.
All right, take a look at number 68. And this is a photo that you took as well?
Yes.
All right, and what is depicted here in Exhibit 68?
That's the lilac bush and it, the leaves curled up and then it's got the dry white residue after the spraying.
Okay, and do you recall when this photo was taken?
I don't actually recall.
Okay, and the lilac bush, as we described, is closer to your back porch?
Yes.
And what portion of the lilac is harvested and sold?
Oh, I don't sell lilac.
You know?
It was just an example of foliage that was damaged.
Okay. And this photo was taken after the July of 21 incident?
I believe so.
And what are we looking at here that's the damage, according to your observation?
Well, the leaves are curled up and mainly I'm just showing the white residue that's dried on there from the spray.
How do you normally irrigate the lilac plants?
I have them on a drip system also.
No sprinkler?
No.
All right, and what does Exhibit 69 show?
That is the Yakina Savoy Asian greens. And the shows the holes beginning in the spring.
All right, and this was taken when?
After the July 6th rain,
Okay.
not long after.
All right, and is this some of the spots and holes that you described earlier that you immediately started to see after the spray?
This was like the next day or so, yeah.
Okay, and the spots or the that are in this photo are what you believe was from the spray?
Chemical burn, yes.
I have to just ask. You don't have any like formal training or education in plant pathology or plant physiology to be able to distinguish chemical burn from fertilizer burn or sunburn, anything like that, do you?
Just my own experience
Okay.
for the past, since 1993, that I've been growing in this valley.
All right. But no formal training or education on that?
Nope.
Okay. And this is Exhibit 70,
Yes,
and this is a pepper plant?
yeah.
And what did you photograph here?
I photographed that the leaves are yellowing, they're curling up, they've got holes in them, and there's a white residue on the plastic from the chemical.
All right, so the white residue that we see in the right portion of this photo is from the chemical, from the spray?
Yes.
And how are the pepper plants irrigated?
Everything I have is on a drip system, and the lines are ran underneath that plastic, and it also keeps the moisture in.
And the holes that are on the leaf here in the center of the photo, is that from the spray also?
Yes, they weren't there before that.
And this was taken after the July incident?
Yes.
Okay. This is your apple tree?
Yes.
And where's the apple tree located?
It's somewhere around the middle, over on the north side of the property also.
Towards that shed?
Well, it's in the middle of the field. It's, if you go from the shed and go go east, then there's a line of fruit trees right there by that road.
And before I ask you another question on this, getting back to that last one, the pepper plant. In 21, so that photo was July of 21, but in August of 20, when Mr. Long took the sample, was that pepper plant in basically planted in that same part of the field?
It was a completely different setup that year,
Okay, all right.
which it is every year because I do a lot of rotation because of bugs and things, because the more you rotate and move things around, then you're moving away those particular plants from the bugs that were there the year before or the season before.
Okay, and you had mentioned earlier, and we may get to it, about the plant that's beneficial, so that attracts insects, then that would be predators and would naturally control the pests that you don't want.
Yes,
And
also bring in bees.
is there anything that you do to, organically, to try to control the bugs that you don't want?
I don't have a whole lot of problem with bugs, but I do hand pick certain things like tomato worms, and because we like to feed them chickens.
Okay.
But
You don't try to just wash it off with water or soapy water or anything like that to stick?
I haven't had any need to, because it's been, really good with the rotation plan that I have. I've done really well.
Okay, and what's wrong with it? What are the issues with the apple tree that's in this photo?
Well, this apple tree turned yellow, the leaves are curling, and the fruit turned hard and black and started dying.
And that happened right after the spray?
Yes, it started happening, and over time it got worse and worse within a couple of weeks.
All right, and what is this photo here? This is number 72.
That bottom row is the sage plants that just up and died. And, you know, this is some asparagus, but it didn't really damage the asparagus too much.
And when you said this is the asparagus, can you point that again?
Well, it's these lines.
Okay, perfect,
These
thanks.
two rows of asparagus there.
Okay, thank you. I can clear that now, I believe. Okay. And exhibit 73, what is this?
That is a rosemary plant.
Okay, and what are the concerns that you observed in this plant?
Well, it just turned yellow and a lot of the foliage and stuff started dying.
All right, and what's the gravel area right behind it?
That's just it's kind of on the north side of my shed there. It's where the driveway runs this way and then you can go out that way. It's like a driveway.
Okay.
This is on the side of my house,
Okay, thank you.
on the north side.
And,
It's what I call Herb Hill.
okay,
It's got a lot of herbs there and stuff.
this is the hens and chicks,
Yes.
and this is the beneficial that you're talking about?
Yes.
And what are you documenting in this photo?
I'm documenting that they used to be green and they turned completely white and fell down and, you know, half of it died.
And where are they located in relation to the property?
Well, the same thing, they're right on Herb Hill. They're on the, I have a line of rosemary that runs this way, and then all my hens and chicks are here. But if you go under the rosemary, those are all green and pretty, but these out where they were exposed got very damaged. And they're very susceptible to this spray too.
All right. And what is exhibit 75?
That's various things, but the main thing is I'm showing is these particular celery plants that got brown and curled, and then here's some melons coming in over the sides, and they kind of curled up, and you know, this was like the foliage of it, and then over here's some broccoli and things
All right.
that curled and.
And so everything in this photo is showing some symptoms according to your
To
observation?
some degree, yes.
All right.
All the plants react differently to these sprays. Some take it a lot worse than others.
Exhibit 76, what is this?
That's the tomato area where the tomato plants curled up and started dying.
And what's directly behind the tomatoes, behind that grate?
That is the potatoes,
Okay.
which are starting to show effects, and eventually within a week or two, they just lay down and die too.
All right. So at the time you took this photo of the tomato plant, were you still irrigating?
Yes,
Okay. And then this is also a tomato plant here in exhibit 77?
yes.
What are you showing in this photo?
Well, these tomatoes had just started to come on, and man, they were beautiful, and then we got covered with spray, and then they all just turned white, and you know, you can't use that.
And what is this in exhibit 78?
Well, this is those potatoes that used to be standing up and they were completely green. Well, as you can see, they're the beginning of, they laid down and then they started turning yellow, and like I said, eventually they just turned brown.
All right. All right. Just a couple more. What is this in 79?
That's a zucchini plant that died
Okay.
from the spray.
And then, so is the crop itself that you see in the photo, the yellow and green zucchinis, did they turn that color after the spray?
Yes,
And before they were green?
yes.
And what is this in exhibit 80?
Oh, this is a line of turnips, because the way I do the root crops is I just grow them all in a line, and then you just keep picking them and they just keep growing. It's pretty cool. But, you know, you can see where they've turned yellow and they've got all the rough spots on them, and they've even got that graying color, and they're just kind of curling, and, you know, they weren't that way before. They were greener. It would stand up beautiful.
Okay, and then finally, this is the cantaloupe.
No, that's
I'm
not.
sorry, this is the mustard, exhibit 81.
Yes,
Okay. And you've described that. And then exhibit 82, that's the cantaloupe.
that was my new batch of cantaloupes, yes, and they're
So
dying.
you were still irrigating them at this time?
Yes,
And did they, you're saying that they died as a result of the spray?
yes.
And what about this sunflower? What were you trying to show here?
I'm just showing how, it must have hit that top and the top just died.
And this is
Go figure.
exhibit 83.
Yes.
Is this on the north or south side of the shed?
This is right on the other side of the shed, yeah. On the south side of the shed.
Okay, so closer to the porch.
Yeah. Well, not really. They're kind of actually, you can see right here is the end of the shed.
Right.
And so they're right there at the end of the shed.
And that end of the shed that you just marked in green, that would be the east end of the shed.
Yes.
Okay. So we're looking at the south side of the shed.
Yes.
Okay. All right. And Ms. Odum. This is the apple tree.
Yes, I believe that same apple tree.
All right, and when was this taken?
That was taken after the July spraying off.
All right, and that road that you see in the background, is that our villa?
It is.
Okay. And you're saying that the apple tree that we're seeing in this photograph was damaged from the spray?
Yes, definitely.
Thank you. I'm gonna want to take this off the screen. And I'm using your laptop, so
Okay, just unplug it.
unplug it.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Odom, there's an additional exhibit I wanted to show you. So let me, but before I do that, these photos that we're looking at, the observations that you're making in July,
Yes.
did you ever go back out there and collect any additional samples to try to maybe send it in and get tested?
No.
Let me, this was marked as exhibit 23. These are your sales records, correct, for, at the village?
Yes.
And what's the village again?
It's the Village Farmers Market on Booth in California in Reno, Nevada.
Okay. And just so to make sure we understand, just looking at the very first page, then first invoice on the left side that says 6620.
Yes.
And so on that day, you're talking about selling, 35 onions. You see that about halfway down, line 8?
Yes.
And those are sold at what, so 35 of them for $70, what's the unit price?
I only sell green onions. Those are green onions. It's by the bunch and I sell them for $2 a bunch.
Okay. And then if you go to, for example, the next page, so page 2 of this exhibit, and that invoice on the left side that says $627.20, and towards the bottom where it says squash,
Yes.
that's sold in pounds.
Yes.
So on that day, you sold 22-pound squash for $40?
Yes.
Okay. And then do you have a scale? Do you weigh them, or how is it
Yeah, I weigh them.
at your booth?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. And so in 2022,
Yes.
so last year, you said you decided to scale back what you were selling?
Yeah.
And where did you sell in 22?
I just sold, I had a little farmer's, I had a little stand at my house
Okay,
that I did, and then I had some private customers that would
Okay.
come by and just get stuff from me.
all right, so you didn't go back to the Reno Farmers Market
No,
and didn't sell to the Fallon Food Hub?
no.
All right, just all the questions I have, thank you.
Mr. Busby?
Very briefly, Your Honor. So just very, very briefly.
Yes.
Do you recall being asked questions about some samples that were sent to a lab?
Yes.
Okay, do you recall exactly how those samples were sent or who sent them?
I honestly do not recall.
Governor, if I may, I'd like to approach the witness to refresh her recollections.
Okay.
Ms. Odum? Did you see this email? Who is it from?
It's from Richard P. Yin,
Okay, and who is he?
Deputy Attorney General, Nevada Office of the Attorney General.
Okay. Can you read this first message there?
The NDA is responding to your subpoena and notes that it requires the sample to be sent directly to you. Would you prefer it to be sent directly to a lab so there are fewer degrees of chain of custody? The NDA was concerned that the sample should be handled by trained professionals.
And Ms. Odum? Could you please read this email on this page?
We need the samples sent to Resco Lab in San Francisco. Please find their submission form and packaging instruction attached. Please fill out the form where applicable and copy me for sending.
Who is that from?
That's from Richard P. Lynn to Luke Busby.
Excuse me. Oh, is that?
Oh, yeah.
First one.
Hi, Richard.
So it's from.
From you. Yeah, I know now. Okay.
And so does that refresh your memory as to how the samples that were tested? were
Yes,
sent?
it does.
How are they sent?
I gave them to you, or you sent them.
Okay, and they were issued, it says they were sent to MSCO from the Department of Agriculture, correct?
Yes, that's right. I remember now.
Are those the samples you were referring to in your testimony?
Yes.
I think further, thank you.
Mr. Leath, anything based on that?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Thank you. Would you just leave it, we'll get that. Either Bill can get it or next witness.
The plaintiff calls Annette Anderson.
Annette Anderson?
Yes.
Mr. Clerk, we have all these minutes.
Yes, we do.
If you could face the clerk and raise your right arm to take the oath of the witness.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give in this matter now pending before the court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God, or under the pains and penalties of perjury?
Please be seated. And that's a microphone that you can move around. If you get it closer to you, it's just easier for everyone to hear.
Okay.
I'd like to seek leave to ask the leading questions, introductory question, just to speed things along.
I think that's generally allowed within the rules of evidence. Do you have any objection?
No, Your Honor.
Thank you. Ms. Anderson, can you please state your name and spell it for the record?
Annette Anderson, ANNETTE, ANDERSON,
Okay, and where do you live now?
Fallon, Nevada.
Okay, is that close to Minnesota?
Yes, it is.
How close?
I think I referred to it about a football field and a half away,
Okay.
in county ways.
Do you recall an incident in mid-August of 2021 involving a plane flying over your house?
Yes, I do.
Okay, can you tell the jury what happened?
Well, there was a plane, and I always look at planes because we never know where they might land, hopefully not. And so we went outside and we watched and we saw it flew around a couple times and then it flew, I don't know, east, flew west. And it dipped down towards Salisha's yard and flew back up.
Okay, and when you say we, who you're referring to?
Oh, my late husband,
Okay, and what was his name?
George.
Okay. Did Mr. Anderson file a complaint regarding this incident?
Yes, we did.
I'd like to show you an exhibit if I may.
Richard?
Mr. Anderson, do you recognize that document?
I do, I have a copy of it.
What is it?
It's a complaint form, a verified complaint.
Whose signature is that?
That is George Anderson's signature. For the rest, yes.
Is that his handwriting?
No, that is my handwriting,
Okay. Have you signed it?
yes.
Your Honor, we're just gonna object hearsay based on the fact that signature is not hers.
I mean, I guess, I don't know what the purpose of this, I'm gonna overrule it this time, but I'll let you renew it. Let's just see where it goes.
Yes. Ms. Anderson, what is this document that I just showed you describe?
It describes actions of the plane that flew over our house and rattled the windows.
Okay. And Your Honor, if I may move to admit exhibit number 5.
And your objection is?
Same objection hearsay, Your Honor.
Hearsay. So her testimony is that she wrote it and he signed it. And what is the purpose of you having you're receiving the document be admitted for?
It's to show the impressions of the witnesses to the plane flying over their house and over the neighborhood.
The document is hearsay, she was able to testify to it, right? And it's her words, it's not his words, she's here.
May I ask a few more questions?
Of course,
Okay,
I
thank you.
just trying to work through it.
Okay. Ms. Anderson, when did you write this?
The morning of the 17th,
Okay. Was it shortly after the incident?
yes.
And does it record your impressions and what you saw that day?
Yeah,
Okay. Was it written close enough such that those impressions were fresh in your mind?
yes.
So I move that it be admitted.
Yeah, Mr. Leath?
Your Honor, the same objection, I feel as if the witness can just describe your testimony as opposed to the document.
So my concern is the potential for confusion, just because it's her statement that it has a different signature, but I think she's addressed it. So I'm gonna allow that and give a limited instruction to the jury that this exhibit, which is marked as exhibit 5, it'll be admitted into evidence, but it is Ms. Anderson's statement, even though underneath it is a signature of Mr. Anderson.
And if I may, I'd like to publish it to the jury.
Of course.
All right, Ms. Anderson, is this exhibit 5, which I just showed you? Can you see that? Okay.
Yes.
All right. So does this essentially just describe what you said to me?
Yes.
And did your husband say anything else? Or I'm sorry, it says here, he was so low it vibrated our house, rose back up into the sky about Robertson. There was a smell in the air afterwards. Did you smell something afterwards?
I don't remember.
Okay. Do you remember Mr. Anderson telling you that you did?
Objection hearsay, Your Honor.
I'll sustain that.
I'll withdraw it.
And by her not remembering is objection of the concern of the hearsay with this document.
I understand. I'm letting it in as a present sense, her present sense impression.
Did you do anything else at the time the plane was flying over your property?
I watched it, prayed it didn't crash.
Okay. Did your husband record it?
Yes.
Or if I'd like to approach the witness, if I may. Senator, so I'm going to ask you if you recognize this video.
Yes, I do.
See, where's he going? Right across Salisha's property, or close to it.
Ms. Anderson, do you recognize that video?
Yes, I do.
Do you recognize the voices in the video?
Yes, I do.
Whose voices are those?
The male voice belongs to Jordan Anderson, who's deceased, and the very end one is mine.
Okay. Do you recognize your own voice in this video?
Yes,
Did you see the video being recorded?
yes.
And when was this video recorded?
I believe the morning in August 17th.
I move that this exhibit number 21 be admitted into evidence.
Same objection here, so Your Honor.
I'm not going to admit it, but it's not because of hearsay. I think that there may be some more foundational questions about whether, I'm not, I mean, there's some pretty basic foundational questions that would, the test is whether it fairly and accurately depicts.
Yes, sir.
But go ahead.
If I may, Your Honor. Ms. Anderson, does this video show the same thing you saw that morning?
Yes.
On the playing field of your house? Okay, is there anything about the video that's inaccurate?
No.
Has it been altered at all?
No.
Okay. Have you watched the video since your husband reported it?
A couple times.
Your Honor, I move that it be admitted into evidence.
With the same objection.
Yes.
So I'll admit it, it's exhibit 21.
Your Honor, if I may publish to the jury?
Yes.
Yes.
Ms. Anderson, I'm going to play the video for the jury.
See, where's he going? Right across Salisha's property, or close to it.
Okay. Ms. Anderson, I'm just going to show you a map real quick of your neighborhood. And the screen you're seeing in front of you, you can actually mark it up with your finger. Do you recognize the pin there on 5862 McPherson Lane?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know whose property that is?
No, because I don't know their names.
Okay. Do you know where Salisha's property is?
Yes.
Okay, can you point that out? Okay. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Wait, yeah. Can you move the map?
Yeah. Actually, ma'am, do you recognize where your property is here?
Can you make it bigger?
Sure. How's that?
Mine is right there.
That's your home? Can you mark on the screen where it was you and your husband were standing when Exhibit 21 was filmed?
Salisha's property's right there.
Okay. So just returning to exhibit number 5. So just to be clear on what happened here, did your husband just ask you to write this form?
I believe these are his words
Okay,
that I wrote on the paper.
okay. So he asked you to write down this same form and he signed it?
Yes.
No further questions from me. Thank you.
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. Hi, Ms. Anderson.
Hi.
Can I approach her?
Of course.
Exhibit 56 and 57. Ms. Anderson, I'm going to show you first exhibit, may I approach?
Yes.
Exhibit 56. You said that's your residence address?
Yes,
1165 Dean Lane?
yes.
Okay. And taking a look at exhibit 56, right where you see the top of the letter N for Dean,
Mhm.
that's the street right in front of your house, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and that's where you just pointed to where you and your late husband were standing when that video was taken?
Yes.
Okay, and in that video, which was marked as Exhibit 21, the plane that you observed as it was leaving the Dean Lane area was flying north, correct?
No, it came, the video was taken, the plane was going east, kind of did a U-turn and went back west when it dipped down and came back up.
And that's on the video?
Yes.
Okay. So at the end of the video, as the plane is flying away from where you and your husband were standing, that would be going northbound on Dean Lane towards Arvilla Lane, correct?
No, it turned and went west. I mean, it came from the east, did a U-turn, went north for a while, and then it went west.
Okay. And when you observed it then, you were standing though in the middle of Dean Lane right in front of your house though, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And in the video, it appears that, well, do you have neighbors then that are up on the corner of Dean and Arvilla?
There are residents there, yes.
And there's some large trees that are there in front of their house? Okay. And so if you're looking at Exhibit 56, those trees would then be to the north of where you live, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then, Ms. Anderson, I appreciate your patience while we're getting our coordinates here, okay? So this is Exhibit 57. And if I may, your residence on Dean is right about here, correct? Yeah, okay, and just for the record, the witness, if you can I get a marker? Actually, I think I have one. Yeah,
I can't, I'm not, that's a marked admitted exhibit.
okay. Then why don't you just go ahead and describe where that is on that?
And we can use the document camera if that's helpful, or,
Yeah, we could, it's just gonna take a little bit to set up, so.
it's, we can, we have a bailiff who's familiar with it.
Okay. Do you mind?
That's why we have.
I apologize.
No.
I'll put it up on the picture. I won't get that. All right, can we zoom? Okay. I hate to repeat, Ms. Anderson, but if you would please on your screen, now that this is enlarged, can you please point to where your residence is on Dean Lane, on this exhibit 57? Okay, and then the street where you took the video, or where you were standing when the video was taken, is where? Okay,
It's on the street, it's Dean.
okay, and then if you go north on this exhibit, you will see a canal, correct?
A vacant lot.
No, there's a, and then there's a vacant lot, and then there's a
and then a
canal,
canal.
and then there's some railroad tracks.
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
All right, and then do you see that field that's to the north of the railroad tracks?
Yeah,
Are you familiar with that agricultural field there in your neighborhood?
there's no houses there, but I don't know what they grow on it.
Okay, but you know that they grow crops there?
I'm sure they do.
Okay, all right. Those are all the questions I have, thank you.
Mr. Busby?
Nothing further, Your Honor, thank you.
Ms. Anderson?
And if I may, I'd like to request that Ms. Anderson be released from the speech.
Objection?
No.
You're released from the subpoena.
Thank you.
I'll retrieve this one.
Mr. Busby, you're next witness.
Your Honor, I believe typically you'd like to take break at 11:30. I'm not sure if you prefer if we break now or.
Is it, do we have a witness we can get done before noon? Or
Yes.
is everyone, anybody need a break?
No.
And if we're ready, let's just keep going forward.
Okay, the plaintiff calls Terry Rakoff. I believe it's Sarah.
Yes, we do.
Can you speak with the bailiff for a moment?
And what we'll do is it Mr. Rakoff?
Yes, sir.
We'll have Mr. Rakoff be right here in front with a portable microphone. And anybody who needs to move so that they can see Mr. Rakoff, feel free to move. Mr. Smith, maybe you could hold open the door.
I think I've tried legal.
Okay. Mr. Rakoff, if you'll come just forward here to.
Okay.
You just go right in front here and spin around and face the clerk right here.
Okay.
If you raise your right arm, I think it will be witness.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give in this matter, now pending before the court, shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God, or under the pains and penalties of perjury?
Yes.
Okay, Just raise up your hand and just back in, so if that's okay.
I just want to clip it onto your shirt.
Would you flip it around? My hands are paralyzed. Set it loud. Thank you.
Mr. Rakoff.
Good morning.
It's a pleasure to see you. Could you please state and spell your name for the record?
Terry.
I'm sorry, we haven't sworn you yet.
I'm just checking to make sure the sound's coming through.
Oh, you did.
It sounds okay,
Okay, good.
Can you please state your name and spell it for the record, sir?
It's Terry Rakoff, Terry Rehkoff.
All right. Mr. Rakoff, can you tell the jury where you live?
I live,
Okay. Can you see the screen over there?
yeah,
Okay. I'd like to show you a map. Does that accurately depict where you reside, sir?
yes,
Okay. And do you recognize, or do you know where my client lives? Salisha?
yes,
Okay. Does she
She's
live
my
close by?
neighbor.
Okay.
yes.
Can you identify on the map, just through describing
Just-
where your property is?
Our properties border each other on the eastern boundary.
Okay. Is there a road in between your properties?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And do you know Miss Odum?
Yes,
Okay. How long have you known
10 years at least, I don't know.
her? Are you acquaintances or friends?
No,
or-
I mean, I wave at her and she waves at me,
Okay.
but I don't know her personally.
Okay. I'm sure you're aware, we're here to discuss an incident that occurred on July 6, 2021, correct?
Yes.
And can you just tell the jury what you recall about that day?
Okay, I don't remember the exact date. I don't remember yesterday, but anyway, when the plane was spraying the field, I'm a quadriplegic, and my attendant got me up and I heard the plane, so I went out front to watch, because I like to watch crop dusters because they're it's like an air show, but when he came over and did a U-turn over our house, I smelled, and I didn't see anything, but I did smell the smell of a chemical type, like, if I had to guess, I smelled like diesel fuel or something, but and then we didn't get any fruit that year off we have 6 or 8 cherry fruit trees, and we get anything off of any of them.
And Mr. Rakoff, normally would you have gotten fruit?
We have almost every year. I mean, there's been a couple years, like last year, we didn't get any because we had a late freeze.
Can you tell me approximately how high you believe the plane was on the floor over your home?
Maybe 150 feet, I don't know. I don't know.
From where you were observing the plane, could you see whether or not it went over my client's property?
Yeah, it had to be, because that's my mom's field across the street, and so.
It's your mom's field that was being sprayed by the crop duster?
Is what?
That was being sprayed that day by the crop
Yes.
duster? Did you recognize the crop duster?
Yes.
Okay. How did you recognize it?
I know Jerry, and I know his plane and his business, so.
Okay. Did you see any spray coming from the plane?
As it was going over the field, and I mean, I think he probably attempted to stop spraying at the edge of the field, but I don't know how fast they go, but I imagine they go pretty fast, and I don't see how he could actually just cut it off right as he's exiting the field.
Okay. Did you see spray?
Your Honor, I'm just going to object and move to strike the last portion as speculative.
Sustained, no, just the last portion about where he, all of it will be stricken from the record.
Understood, Your Honor. Mr. Rakoff, what did you actually see that day in terms of spray coming from the plane after the plane exited the field of the spray?
Objection, it's leading and it calls for speculation.
Overruled.
As the plane was coming across the field, it was spraying, and I was more interested in the aerobatics part of it. I wasn't really watching the spray, but I mean, you could definitely see that it was spraying. And it was still spraying as it came over my house. I can't say for sure, but I can say for sure that I definitely did smell chemical in the air.
Okay. Did you experience any other any symptoms beyond smelling?
Objection, Your Honor, it's lack of foundation.
I'll allow the question.
My eye is burned.
Okay. All right. Mr. Rakoff, do you have any experience with planes?
Yeah, I was a student pilot at the time. Had passed the ground school and was taking flying lessons. And then I had an accident, broke my neck, so that was the end of that.
And do you recall anything else you want to describe to the jury about what you saw that day that might be important?
Not really.
Right,
That's it.
that's all I have for you, sir.
Okay.
It's time for cross-examination, though, so.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Good morning, Mr. Rakoff. How are you?
Good.
I'm David Leath. We actually met when we took your video deposition.
Right.
Nice to see you in person, sir.
Yes.
Your father and Jerry were friends, or are friends?
And Jerry and I mean, we went to their races one year
Okay.
and hung out, and so yeah.
And I believe you described having a passion for watching aircraft.
Absolutely, yeah. That's
And just a couple minutes ago, you talked about how you like to go out and watch the prop tester work the field because of the kind of the, I think you call it kind of a little air show.
yeah.
Describe what you mean by that to the jury, if you could.
Well, as the plane leaves the field, he climbs up steep and then circles around tight and comes back down, and they're probably 20 feet off the ground. So I'm sure from my mom's house, you see the plane, it looks like it's coming in the window. So,
And so when they are, when that prop tester gets in position and is making a pass, right? You're familiar with that?
right.
They get really low, and that's when they turn on the spray.
Yes.
And that's where you can see the spray as they're working across the field.
Right.
And then they shut off when they get to the end because they gotta rise steeply
Yes.
to make their turns and work around the field.
Correct.
And you've seen when they're done making their pass, they'll have to, it's not a helicopter, they can't turn in the field
No.
itself, so they gotta make their U-turn and they'll go outside of the perimeter of the field and then come back around to it.
Yes, yes.
And that maneuvering, to some people would look like pretty wild flying, huh?
Yes. I think it is pretty wild flying.
Well, they're pretty skilled, right? In order to become a prop
Yes,
tester
right.
pilot, you have to FAA and take all the tests and get all the experience, right?
Right.
And so you know that those guys who are doing the prop testing are good pilots.
Yeah.
Now, when you were watching the pilot that day spraying that field, was he making several passes on that field?
Yes, he probably made 12 to 15.
Okay. And was he making north-south passes?
Yes,
You said that was your mom's field up there?
yes.
So she still owns, or did she used to own that land?
She still owns, she has owned it for 45 years, but she doesn't farm it. She leases it to Dalton Lowry, who is probably the one who hired Jerry. I don't know that for sure, but I know my mom didn't.
Right. No, yeah, Mr. Rakoff, you're right on the money. That was a job that my client was doing for Dalton Lowry in that field. So.
Yeah.
And the only question really that I have left for you, sir, and you said we have an exhibit. We marked it earlier. I don't need it again for you. But your address is
5895.
5895 Arvilla.
Yes.
And I won't waste the time to try to put it back on the screen just to show me where you live. But that field that you're talking about, your mom's field, that's to the north of you?
Yes.
Okay. And, sir, is it possible that the day that you saw my client working that Dalton Lowry field was actually August of 2021?
I don't recall the exact date. My memory just isn't that good.
All right, so it's possible it could have been August?
Oh, yes, yeah,
Those are all the questions I have. Thank you so much, sir.
okay.
Mr. President.
Here with you. Mr. Rakoff, as to the date and time of the incident, did you create a statement regarding the incident?
I believe I did at the time, yeah, and that would have been far more accurate because it was a lot closer to the time.
Okay, so do you recall the time frame in which you made?
Yeah, I remember making the message. I don't remember what it said, but
Okay. May I approach that, Mr. Rakoff, I'd like to show you something.
okay.
Do you recognize that document?
Yep.
What is it?
It's a document that my wife and I wrote for Salisha,
Okay, and when is it dated?
July 7th,
Of what year?
2022.
Is that the safe you were just referring to?
Yes,
Does that refresh your recollection as to the time frame you're
Yes.
talking about?
Yeah.
So, do you recall now which date you wrote this statement?
Your Honor, we're just going to object. Ms. States is testifying.
Well, I'm going to overrule that, but I mean, I think there was a document that was used, it was, I think the foundation was looking to refresh his recollection. And allow, I mean, I don't know if that's not, go ahead.
That was my purpose. And Mr. Rakoff, after seeing this document, do you recall now whether the incident occurred in July of 2022?
I would say so.
Thank you, Your Honor. Nothing further.
So what do you think is-
No, Your Honor, I think.
May this witness be excused?
I'm sorry, yes, sir.
Yes, Your Honor.
Mr. Riddell, thank you very much.
Okay.
Your Honor, I move that Mr. Rakoff be released from this.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay. It's 11:40, where are we at?
I have one more witness, Your
Oh, yeah.
Honor.
Is everybody okay in taking a break? Okay. Staff? Okay.
I do have associated motions and to place them some papers outside the presence of the jury. I was the witness, but
We'll go ahead and do the witness, and then maybe we'll excuse the jury for lunch and take care of our business.
thank you. Your Honor, I call Sarah Baker.
Ms. Baker, if you please come here to the witness stand.
Okay.
If you face the clerk and raise your right arm, take the oath of the witness.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give in this matter now pending before the court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God or under the pains and penalties of perjury?
Yes, ma'am.
Please be seated.
Can you please state and spell your name for the record?
My name is Sarah Baker. The first name is S-A-R-A-H. Last name is B-A-K-E-R.
Ms. Baker, can I ask you to scoot up to that microphone and pull that right in front of you? Go ahead.
All right, Ms. Baker, do you recognize the plaintiff?
Yes, I do.
Who is she?
That's my mother.
Okay. And do you live with your mother?
Yes, I do.
And where do you live?
I live on.
Okay. And how long have you lived there?
I've lived there for 16 years.
Okay. And how old are you?
16.
All right, Ms. Baker, do you recall an incident on August 31st, 2020 involving a plane?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Did you take a video of that incident?
Yes, I do.
I may approach it. Mr. I'm going to play this for you and ask you if you're playing this. Ms. Baker, do you recognize that video?
Yes, I do.
What is it?
That is a video that I took on August 31st of Jerry Frey flying over my neighbor's house, which is right next to ours. And that is our bamboo. And that was the video that I took out of our window.
Okay. Did you see the plane near your house that day?
Yes, I did.
Did you see it fly over your house?
Yes, I did.
Okay. How high was it when it flew over your house?
The house, I don't know exactly, but it was a little bit over like the average size of the house, like the average height. And I remember it going straight over us.
Did you sense anything else that happened during that time frame?
Not really.
Could you smell anything?
Yes, I could.
Did you see anything coming from the plane?
Yes.
Objection, Your Honor, leading. Move to strike.
I'll sustain that, I don't like this reader.
Okay, do you recall anything specific about the plane that day that was unusual?
No, I don't.
Do you recall seeing something coming from the plane?
Yes.
Okay, what was it?
There was a mist that came out of the plane and it seemed to cover the area of our house.
Okay. And where were you standing when you saw this?
I was standing in the doorway.
Did you ever walk outside?
No, I didn't.
Did you feel anything?
No.
Okay. All right. And the video accurately, where were you when you took it?
I was outside of the window, which is in the living room.
Your Honor, if I may, I'd like to move to Exhibit 86.
That's right.
I didn't catch the number, I'm sorry.
86.
86. Submit it, Your Honor.
It'll be admitted,
Thank you, Your Honor. If I may, I'd like to publish it for the jury.
of course.
All right, Ms. Baker, is that the plane you saw flying over your home that day?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And so this wasn't the time that it flew over your house, but another time it did, is that what you said?
Yes.
Was the plane flying over your house, over your property around your house?
Yes, it was.
Okay, so, and I'm gonna pull up a map real quick, and I'm gonna ask you to, do you see the property in the middle of this? Okay, is that your home?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Can you describe or point, you can actually draw on the screen there. Can you describe for the jury where you were standing when you took the video?
I was standing like in the house.
Oh, okay,
It's like the side of the window.
okay. And can you describe where the plane was when it flew over your property?
The plane, when I took the video?
Yeah.
Was about
Okay. All right. And is there anything else about anything you observed that day related to the plane you want to tell the jury?
Well, I know that I saw the plane like circle the house and that it came back. Well, it went over our house for a few times and then it came, and then it left and then it came back and went over our house again.
Were you watching the plane this entire time?
Yes, I was.
Okay. Were you frightened?
It like alarmed me, but I wasn't scared. It was more like it's just what was happening at the time.
Okay. And what was going on with your mom when this was happening?
So it was the first day of school and I was trying to do online school at the time, and my mom told me that there was a plane that was going around our house at the time, and I just dropped everything and started focusing on that.
All right, nothing further, Your Honor. Thank you.
Mr. Lee?
I have no questions, thank you, Your Honor.
Ms. Baker, thank you very much. Is this a good time to break for lunch?
It is, Your Honor. We have a few motions we need to.
So, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, we will take a little bit over an hour and a half recess for the lunch break. During this recess, it is your duty not to converse among yourselves or with anyone else on any subject connected with the trial. Do not communicate with anyone in any way regarding the case or its merits, either by phone, email, text, internet, or other means. Do not read, watch, or listen to any news or media accounts or commentary about the case. Do not do any research, such as consulting dictionaries, using the internet, or using reference materials. Do not make any investigation, test the theory of the case, recreate any aspect of the case, or in any other way investigate or learn about the case on your own. Additionally, it is your duty not to form or express an opinion on any subject connected with the case until it is finally submitted to you. Go ahead and excuse you for lunch. You're welcome to go in the jury room or leave. We're back on the record on case number 21-1038, Odum v. Frey. Record should reflect the presence of the parties, counsel, all officers of the court were meeting outside the presence of the jury. We've excused them for the lunch break. I have one issue to bring up. We had a bench conference at 10:10. My recollection is there was some questioning by Mr. Leath and Ms. Odum about her testimony regarding gathering samples and sending them to the lab, the Amoresco lab. You asked to approach. We had a brief discussion, and then Mr. Lee's questioning continued. I believe that a lot of those issues were dealt with in subsequent questioning, but is there anything that first, I guess, you asked to approach, Mr. Busby, anything you want to put on the record about that bench conference?
Nothing further.
Mr. Lee, anything?
No.
Thank you. And then we'll start with you, Mr. Busby. You said you had some motions.
Your Honor, I think what the most efficient way to handle this is for Mr. Lee and I to confer about which request for admissions and interrogatories he'll object to the admission to evidence. That's my last step for the rest of it. If we may do that over lunch at some time and then present that to the court, I think it shouldn't take long.
Mr. Lee, any objection to that?
No, that's fine.
Okay, so why don't we do this? Why don't we come back and plan on, well, we'll just go on the record at 1:30 because we don't know, we'll wait, or whenever the jurors get back, and then we'll do whatever we need to on the record, and then we'll have the jury come in. Is that okay?
And just from a planning standpoint, is it, does plaintiff intend to rest after that?
Yes.
Okay. Because I have a witness who's queued up to be here at 1:30.
Perfect. And anything you need the court to address?
No, not at this time.
Your Honor.
Not at this time.
Yeah, I see.
Yes.
I just want to put on the record that we are going to reserve a motion for judgment as a matter of law and all of the evidence before the case is submitted to the jury under Rule 50A. Just want to give the court notice that I'm going to do that.
Very well. We'll go ahead and we'll recess then for the lunch break. We'll be back at 1:30. Thank you.
All rise.
Sorry.
All rise.
Please be seated. We're back on the record on case number 21-1038, Odum v. Frey. Record should reflect the presence of the parties, counsel, all officers of the court. We're meeting outside the presence of the jury. I'm informed that we have a few issues we need to go over. Evidentiary or
Yes, sir. We've stipulated to admission of several interrogatories and requests for admission. I'd like to make a record of that. And
are those marked as exhibits now?
they are.
What exhibit number?
Exhibit 1 are the answers of Defendant Jerry Frey in his first set of interrogatories. And we stipulated interrogatory number 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Okay.
There's an objection to interrogatory number 5. We still believe that this answer is admissible. We'd like to make a renewed motion at a later point in the case.
So there's 1, 2, 3, and 4. Is there only 5 admissions?
That's it.
There's only 5 interrogatories.
So let's just talk, just procedurally. how do we, because they're 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 are all together right now, right?
Right.
So, but everybody agrees that 1 through 4 are admitted by stipulation?
Yes.
So 1 through 4 will be admitted.
So what we can do is do an additional exhibit that's only pages 1 through 4. I don't know
A
what.
question, are they on 4 separate pages?
They are not, Your Honor, there's some overlap. What I'd be glad to do is provide the court, I can redact a copy using Acrobat.
Why don't we do this? I mean, why don't we, depending on whether 5 comes in or not, if 5 comes in, we can just admit it as exhibit 1, and if it's 1 through 4, we'll admit it as exhibit 1A. So 1 would be a complete version of what the jury can take in with them and review would be 1A. Would that be okay?
And 1A would be the redacted.
Redact, yeah, be redacted.
Yes.
Okay. So, request for admission 1 through 4 are admitted now.
There's interrogatories.
Interrogatories, 1 through 4, will be admitted.
Can I just ask that everybody just speak up a little bit on microphones? Pick up sound, but if you can just be a little closer or speak up a little bit going forward.
All right, Your Honor, moving on. Exhibit number 2, our defendant, Jerry Frey and Frey Spray LLC's response to plaintiff's first request for admission. We've stipulated to request number 3, 5, 6, 10, and that's all.
Mr. Leath?
Your Honor, what was that list one more time, Counsel?
I had 3, 5, 6, and 10.
3, 5, 6, and 10. Correct.
So, and we'll use that same, I'm assuming there's a 1, a 2, and a 7, 8, and 9. But if it stays the same, and it's just 3, 5, 6, and 10 that are admitted, we'll do a 2A. And just redact those. So 3, 5, 6, and 10 will be admitted by stipulation. Anything else?
With that, Your Honor, plaintiff rests her case in chief.
Mr. Leath, anything from you?
Just as echo from Mr. Hebert's comments before lunch, we reserve on the Rule 58 motion.
And I think Rule 50, and I appreciate I always like to go back and reread it. You think you know what it says, but you want to make sure it says at any time before it's submitted to the jury. And then as far as on Exhibit 1, number 5, you'll let me know when you want to address that.
Thank you, Your Honor. If the issue comes up again, I assume we'll do so in the course of testimony by witnesses and defendant at that point for appropriate knowledge of the motion.
Very well. Are we ready for the jury?
Your Honor, one,
Yes.
I assume that the other bad act, prior bad act that was proposed, which was the dive bombing by Joe Frey's house, it's gone by the wayside. We're not gonna,
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. He's arrested.
that's my point.
Yeah. I mean, I want to address that.
Your Honor, we reserve the right to call that witness as appropriate. And that issue is also addressed in the response to interrogatory number 5.
Okay. Very well. Anything else?
There you are.
We'll go ahead and bring in the jury. And I'll just inform them, do you want to rest in front of them, or do you want to just inform them to rest?
You may be further.
Okay. Go back on the record on case number 21-1038, Odum v. Frey. The record will now reflect the presence of the parties, counsel, all officers of the court, and the full jury. Will the counsel stipulate to the correct seating of the jury?
So stipulated.
Yes.
Ladies and gentlemen, the jury, the plaintiff has vested their case in chief, and it will now be the defense's opportunity to call witnesses. Mr. Leath, you may call your first witness.
Yes, Your Honor, on behalf of the defendants, we plan to introduce witnesses for the defense, and our first witness that we call is Dr. Dale Rush.
Rush. Dr. Rush, you get to come up to the witness stand?
Sure.
If you face the clerk and raise your right arm to take the oath of a witness.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony that you're about to give in this matter, now pending before the court, shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God or under the pains and penalties of perjury?
Yes.
Please be seated. You can proceed.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dr. Rush, could you please state your full name and spell your last name for us?
Sure. Dale Warren Rush, R-U-S-H.
Good afternoon, Dr. Rush. You were retained by the defense in this case as an expert witness, correct?
Yes.
And if you would please, sir, share with us a little bit about your educational background.
Sure. Well, I mean, starting out, I grew up on my mom's family's farm, driving a tractor and wrenching and spraying weeds and irrigating and all that, which was sort of the real education. After that, I attended the University of California. I got a bachelor's degree in environmental biology, which is basically plant science, plant ecology. Went on to UC Davis and got a master's degree and a doctorate degree in soil science and plant nutrition, and the emphasis there was plant science. I did research on developing salt-tolerant crops. After that, I went to work for Union Oil Company in California. Union Oil Company was a large fertilizer and chemicals manufacturer. I worked 13 years for Union Oil Company as an agronomist and as a supervisor and a manager of their technical services group. And we did several things, including development of fertilizer products, development of certain pesticide products, including nematicide, fungicide, herbicide, water treatment materials, acid fertilizers, surfactants, and as well as I ran the technical services group, which was a group of agronomists, and we were also tasked with working with all of Union Oil's or Unical's customers. Whenever a grower had a problem, they would send us out to try to solve the problem, figure out what went wrong, or what the situation was, and deal with it. After I did that for 13 years, and then I took over a business in 1994 of what we call forensic agronomy. We were forensic agronomists. We did crop loss, crop damage, agriculture-related crop claims, damage claims. And I did that full-time up until I recently turned that business over to somebody else, and I'm finishing out my old cases. That's what I'm doing here.
And that time that you spent as Rush and Associates, or Mark Croft and Rush, and now Rush and Dettel, can you describe the types of cases that you would investigate, and did some of that investigation turn into courtroom work as an expert witness?
Yes. We worked with or for farmers, seed companies, retail ag chem companies, basic manufacturers, fertilizer and chemical manufacturers, anybody that had a problem, that they needed to be resolved, or they wanted to figure out what had happened, we were hired to go out and do an investigation and evaluate the causation. Usually it had to do with what caused it, who caused it, who's responsible, and what's it cost, what's the damage, what's the loss. So I've done that for the past almost 29 years. We handle, on average, about 100 investigations each year. So over that period of time, we've done somewhere between 2,500 and 3,000 investigations of ag-related losses. We've also worked for the Department of Justice, State Department, the State of California, various regulatory agencies, as well as private entities, Caltrans. Whoever had a problem, that's who we work for, that's who called us.
And have you done any work investigating claims of pesticide drift or pesticide exposure?
I would say that pesticide drift would probably be the #1 investigative work that we have done. And certainly pesticide exposure, whether it was by accident, or whether it was drift, or whether it was an application that was accidentally made of the wrong product. So it's always been a big part of our business.
And have you also done investigations into claims involving organic crops?
Oh, yes.
Can you describe that experience?
Sure. They're organic crops. There's some misconception out there that organic farming doesn't use pesticides or commercial products, and that's just simply not true. There are something like over 1,100 products that are certified as organically acceptable that are registered to the EPA. But nonetheless, there are many products, standard products out there that include pesticides, certain fertilizers, plant growth regulators, surfactants, all kinds of things that haven't been certified for use in organics. And so if they end up in an organic field, it can be anything from essentially no harm, no foul to decertification of the land for up to 3 years. Usually with regard to organic conventional interfaces, it's an interface between an organic grower and a conventional grower where there is offsite movement from the conventional grower or product the conventional grower is using onto the organic grower. The other side of that is that we get involved with situations where organic growers have problems that they can't resolve or don't resolve, such as development of high populations of insects or fungi, or even weed seeds. And the conventional growers downwind from them end up suffering from the failure of the organic grower to control and maintain the potential pests on their own property. So it's kind of a two-way street. It works both ways.
And Dr. Rush, as far as the forensic agronomy investigation work and consulting that you do, you also have testified before in court as an expert witness?
Yes. Understand that we do lots and lots of cases, and a small percentage of those ever get litigated or end up in the courtroom. Most of the time, there's a problem out there. We go out and figure out what the problem was, tell the parties, and they resolve it. Occasionally, it gets, the attorneys get involved, and even less often, we end up in court. But we do end up in court. I've testified many dozens of times over the last 29 years.
And so you've been qualified in both state and federal court as an expert witness on the topic of forensic agronomy?
Yes, in several states and federal court in several states as well.
Your Honor, we would offer Dr. Rush as an expert in forensic agronomy at this time.
Mr. Busby?
I'd like some working witness or anything.
Of course.
Good afternoon, Dr. Rush.
Hey there.
Pleasure to meet you. Do you have any educational background in chemistry?
Chemistry background?
Yeah.
Well, I had about 60 units of chemistry in college.
Okay. Do you have a degree in chemistry?
I do not.
Do you have any professional certifications in chemistry?
Not in chemistry. I did not mention my certifications. I can if you like.
I'm just asking about chemistry. Have you ever taught a chemistry course?
I don't think so.
Okay. Do you have any experience working as a chemist?
Well, I would say yes, in terms of the work we did in developing varied and sundry pesticides, chemicals.
Have you ever run a mass spectrometer?
GCLC. Most of the analytic work that I did was before mass spec. Now we have another person in our group, Dr. Stephen Morrison, who runs our mass spec work.
Are you certified to run a chemistry lab?
I don't know what that means.
Can you sign in a professional capacity the results of the chemistry analysis from a lab?
I don't know.
Your Honor, we object to Mr. Rush's testimony insofar as it will contain rebuttal of our witness, Dr. Miller's testimony on the grounds that Mr. Rush is not properly qualified to rebut Mr. Miller's opinions. Other than that, we have no objection to his qualifications to testify within the scope of his stated area of expertise in agronomy.
Do you want to address that before I make the room? Or do you have anything?
I think if it comes up, then we'll address it, Your Honor, but I don't think it's germane to his work as a forensic agronomist.
So I'll just make a formal finding that I do believe that he is qualified in his area, that his specialized knowledge will assist the trier of fact, understand the evidence, and determine a fact in issue, and his testimony will be limited to the matters within the scope of his or her knowledge, and I reserve the right to allow either side to address if it gets outside that scope. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor. All right, Dr. Rush. So you were contacted to serve as a expert in this matter by the defense, and your assignment was to review the investigations and evidence that was part of this court proceeding.
Yes.
And can you basically, your understanding that there was a claim by Ms. Odum of pesticide exposure and or drift on the dates of August 31st of 2020 and July 6th of 21 and August 16th or 17th of 21?
Yes.
Okay. And as part of the work that you performed in this case, have you prepared well, first, have you prepared a report?
Yes, I am.
And for purposes of today's testimony, would it assist you in refreshing your memory and providing the jury with the details of your work by being able to refer to your report?
It might.
Your Honor, we have marked for identification only, Exhibit 63, and I'd ask if I could share that with the witness.
Mr. Busby?
No objection.
All right, I'm going to show you Exhibit 63, Dr. Rush. And again, this is just for identification purposes. Is that your report?
Well, yep, it's got my name on it, I wrote it, so.
All right.
I did not talk about my qualifications as was brought up. I would like to explain my qualifications further if I could.
Yeah, absolutely, Doctor. Is there something you would like to?
I'll sustain the objection. I mean, you have leave to ask whatever question.
Sure. Dr. Rusher, are there any additional qualifications based on your experience in the work that you performed in this specific case that you would like to share?
Yes,
And what is that?
I am a qualified state licensed pest control advisor. I'm a qualified state licensed pesticide applicator. I'm a certified agronomist. I'm a certified soil scientist. I'm a certified crop advisor. And all of those require degrees and continuous education courses to just keep up with what's going on, and that allows me to write recommendations to go out in the field and see what's going on, and make applications, and it qualifies me to know what I'm looking at when I go out in the field.
And for example, Dr. Rush, with your qualified applicator's license, you perform ground spray rig spraying types, correct?
Objection, leading?
That's foundational.
Yeah, I'll allow it.
Yes, I do.
Okay, so you're familiar with making a tank mix of pesticides with water and adjusting nozzles and adjusting pressure and spraying the pesticides into a target area?
Yes.
And the other certifications that you hold, you said that there's ongoing education requirements for those?
Yes.
And if you can,
I put that on do not disturb. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, David.
that's okay. The ongoing courses that you take, are some of those topics included in investigations of pesticide exposure and pesticide drift?
Absolutely.
Okay. Now, Dr. Rush, I note that you have provided us with 6 separate opinions and then discussion which supports each of those opinions.
Yes. I'm trying to make sure this thing doesn't come on. I did.
Okay, okay. And Dr. Rush, you understand Ms. Odum's claims. You understand, for example, you've read her deposition, you've looked at the file materials that are part of this lawsuit, correct?
Yes, I have looked at the pleadings, the complaint. I have looked at the reports from the Nevada Department of Agriculture for each of these incidents, including all of their documentation that goes along with it. Looked at the photographs. I've looked at the pesticide labels. I have looked at the depositions of the Nevada Department of Agriculture specialists and others, as well as looking at my own experience and background in all the years that I've been doing this.
Thank you, Dr. Rush. So if you would please, for the jury, let's start. And if you don't mind, let's start by sharing with us, what is your first opinion?
Well, the first opinion is that plaintiff's property is not sprayed by pesticide. And I say that simply because, well, not simply, but looking at the evidence and the idea that, in my experience, if something is sprayed there's a residue and you find it. And that's standard practice for what we do, just like the Department of Agriculture for Nevada does. We go out and we pull samples and we look for the materials that would have been sprayed. And you could find traces of those materials at levels that are much below any amount that would cause a reaction, that is phytotoxicity in the case of a herbicide. So that in the complete absence of finding those materials that were applied, that tells me that, and I agree with the Nevada Department of Agriculture folks, that that property was not sprayed.
What is your, and after listening, or going through your list of primary opinions, we'll talk more about the discussion. Dr. Rush, what is the second opinion that you have in this matter?
The second opinion is basically that not only was it not sprayed, it wasn't drifted upon. And it wasn't drifted upon, in my opinion, because of the same reasons that even drift, you should be able to find residues of the materials that are applied out there. And it just didn't happen.
And Dr. Rush, what is your third opinion in this case?
My third opinion is that there was a finding of de minimis, very small amount of chlorpyrifos in one sample that was taken out there. Chlorpyrifos is an extremely volatile, evaporative material that lifts off and goes wherever after it's been applied, properly applied to the target species, target pest. Whenever we do evaluations where the question comes up, was this a drift or was this a volatility issue? And there are many pesticides out there that volatilize. Diazinon, chlorpyrifos, 2,4-D, triclopyr, there's quite a list. And oxyfluorophenic. And our standard practice has always been, if you have a tank mix that goes out, you test for it. And if you find both products, it's because there was a direct drift. If you only find the volatile one, that's because it lifted off after the point of application. Perfectly acceptable, legal, within the boundaries of proper following the label and all that. It still can lift off.
Objection, Your Honor. I expressed
Your Honor, I think he's referring to the interpretation of the pesticide label, which Van Sloan was talking about yesterday as being the law.
So I'm going to sustain the objection as to the response to perfectly legal.
Sure.
And so the reference to being perfectly legal will be stricken from the record with the rest of the answer. And if you want to clarify by just re-asking the question, you can.
Thank you, Your Honor. And so, Dr. Rush, then with respect to your third opinion, and again, we'll dive in a little bit deeper into the details, but it's been your opinion that the 0.009 parts per million of the chlorpyrifos that was found in the one sample of pepper plant would not have been a result of a drift from the application by the defendants.
That's correct.
Okay. And what is your fourth opinion?
Fourth opinion is that there were the materials that were applied out there are insecticides that were applied to near the property. Insecticides do not cause phytotoxicity. They did not burn plants. They do not cause plants to wilt. They do not cause plants to die. They're insecticides. And therefore, any claim that pesticide sprayed out there caused herbicidal activity is simply without merit, because those products do not cause phytotoxicity.
Thank you, Dr. Rush. And what then, following that opinion, what then is kind of your fifth primary opinion in this matter?
Well, I looked at the photographs, and I'm familiar with all the various levels of organic farming. And you understand that organic farming goes from folks that essentially don't use anything that might be of a synthetic nature, or things that are not necessarily of a synthetic nature. They just don't use any chemicals or fertilizers to speak of, all the way to the commercial products that you normally see in the store, which are what are termed as meet the spec. That is, the people that grow them use all the tools that are certified for use. They use pesticides just like conventional farmers do. They use fertilizers, but they all are certified for acceptable organic use. And so, and you have a situation where none of these things are being used, you're going to have all kinds of things happen to your plants. They're going to senesce, they're going to turn yellow or chlorotic because they don't get enough nutrients. They're going to be attacked by insects. They're going to be attacked by fungi. They're going to have potential root problems, and they're not going to thrive over time. And this certainly happens over the course of the season. And it's my opinion, after looking at the photographs and understanding how so farms, that what she was saying in her garden was exactly what you would expect to see when you farm at the level that she farms.
And just a clarification, the term senesce, what does that mean?
Just, things like us, they go old. Plant grows up, looks nice, produces, and then it starts to degrade. And that's what senescence is.
Thank you. And your sixth opinion concerning your work in this matter, I believe you kind of touched on it a moment ago, but your sixth opinion in reference to the investigation by the Nevada Department of Ag?
I looked at the Nevada Department of Ag reports and their narrative and their documentation. I read their depositions. They followed the same kind of guidelines and rules that I would expect that we do. And I found that after reviewing that I think that what they did was adequate, acceptable, and accurate as far as coming to the conclusion that there were no violations.
Thank you, Doctor. So what I would like to try to do now is have you provide a little deeper explanation for your opinions, as well as your understanding of the allegations, as well as the alleged incidents. And so specifically with respect to the alleged incident on August 31st of 2020, did you have any additional views or impressions with respect to Ms. Odum's claim?
Well, in looking at the information that I was provided and my own experience, like I say, one of the key issues that you should find if you have a direct application is there should be evidence, there should be residues that you find out there. I am a pilot. Some of the things that were described as I understand as to what was being described as what was happening out there is completely inconsistent with what ag pilots do. You know, when you're making applications, you're flying low, you're flying 2 to maybe 6 feet above the crop, and you have to pull up, and go up, make loops and go around, and so you're by nature flying close to the ground, but you turn your equipment on, you turn it off, and if everything's working right, there isn't a problem.
And in your experience with crop dusters and ag pilots, they have the ability in the cockpit to turn on the spray as they start the pass and then turn the spray off before they leave the field?
Well, yes, and kind of the standard procedure is that they will spray paying attention to the wind, so they're not spraying so that the material is going to blow someplace it shouldn't. And they come down, they turn on, and then even before they get to the end, they turn off. And at either the beginning or the end, they will sometimes trim up the field to get those areas that they didn't get because they were turning the equipment on or off early.
And the equipment that they use, it's a, just for foundational purposes, Dr. Rush, we have the crop duster, and then there's a boom that's attached underneath the wing.
Yes.
And that boom has nozzles that are attached to it, or that drop from the boom.
There are federal standards with regard to aerial applications. The boom can only be 3/4 the width of the wingspan of the airplane. The nozzles spray backwards, not downwards, so that they don't create a lot of fines and a lot of movement, offside movement and that sort of thing. So it's all very well defined for the ag pilots. And that equipment is tested and certified and replaced as necessary.
And so when they begin their pass and they begin their spray, they will engage the spray button for this, and then the nozzles will then open and allow the spray to come out.
Yes.
Okay. And then the spray that comes out is in the form of the mixture of water with the pesticides in the size of droplets, correct?
That's correct.
And it's, did you find any concerns with respect to the equipment, nozzles, the droplets that were being operated or during the operation of the crop dusting by the defendants?
Everything I saw appeared to be consistent with the rules and regulations. Now, one of the things that's often done with aerial applications as well as ground applications is they will include what they call a drift control agent. And what that does is that's a material that's put in so that the droplet size doesn't go from big droplets to tiny, tiny droplets. It causes the droplets to all be within a certain range so that they fall out fairly rapidly behind the application. So drift retardant is another way that aerial applicators include in their sprays. And they're not pesticidal, they affect the quality of the spray coming out of the nozzles.
And you saw that material is utilized by clients?
Yes.
Now, Dr. Rush, when you have the target field and you want to avoid drift, they're using droplets then that are designed to stay in the target field, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And your understanding is the pilots did that in this case?
Objection leading.
And I'll ask you a better question. What was your understanding of the method of application with respect to droplets for the pilots?
Well, the equipment, as I saw it, apparently it met the spec. They were flying with the wind direction so that it was north and south, not towards the plaintiff or the other houses, which is again something that you want to do. they were using the proper drift control agents to minimize any droplet size.
And Dr. Rush, we had a little bit of this information yesterday from the witnesses. So if you are standing, for lack of a better word, in the target field, you would end up receiving the full dose or the full rate of the spray that's coming out of the aircraft, correct?
Yes.
And so if the allegation is that the crop duster sprayed Ms. Odum's property, her property would have also been subject to that same full dose.
Objection.
Sustained. Well, that you rephrase it.
Is there any information that you observed in your work or opinions concerning any dose or exposure to Ms. Odum's property?
Well, it's understanding that the claim is that her property, that she and her property were directly sprayed.
Yes, and so what would you expect to see if that were the case?
You would expect to see measurable, significant measurable amounts of whatever products would be sprayed.
And what, in your experience, would be, you know, is that going to be more than 0.009 parts per million?
Yeah, it would be, in my experience, it would be in the part per million range. When you're directly sprayed with something, you could be easily talking about 10 or 20 or 50 parts per million.
Okay. You didn't see any evidence of that in this case?
No.
And you mentioned that the, well, let me rephrase the question, Dr. Rush. In your review of the Nevada Department of Ag report with respect to the August 31st of 2020 incident, was it significant that there was a foliage sample of lilac that was tested by the lab?
Well, yes, and that's because if it had been sprayed, you would have found the residue.
And the results were non-detect.
That's right.
Let me have you, well, and then finally, let me just, and I believe this goes to your third opinion, or I'm sorry, your fourth opinion concerning no herbicide intoxication damage. But was there anything based on your investigation and experience that would suggest the application made by my client on August 31st of 2020 would cause damage to plants?
Leading objection.
I'm just trying to work through the
I
foundation.
agree. I mean, I think it is, I think it's beyond foundational, but I think that would sustain objection.
That's fine, Your Honor. I apologize. I'll
No, it's
get
okay.
a little better with Dr. Rush. Did you observe anything concerning plant or foliage damage with respect to that August 31st of 2020 incident?
No. I looked at photographs that were submitted, and I saw plants in all kinds of conditions. First of all, if you're spraying a herbicide, it's going to take days to really, you know, a systemic herbicide, it's going to take days to show up. It's not going to show up the next day. And same way with any of the insecticides, they just don't cause those, they don't cause phytotoxic, they don't cause burn. They don't cause wilting, they don't cause yellowing, they don't burn holes in the leaves, they don't do any of those things.
And what is it about, and let's then shift gears then to the July 6th, 2021 incident, okay?
Yes.
And with respect to that incident, you understand that Ms. Odum is claiming that she was sprayed directly and that her plants were all soaked with some sort of a direct spray?
That's what I understand from reading her deposition.
Okay. And based on your review of the photographs that were taken concerning that July 6th of 2021 claim, what are your overall opinions?
Objection, best evidence. I'll allow it.
As I've said before, I looked at those photographs and I saw a plethora of symptoms having to do with senescence, with insect damage, with disease damage, with lack of nutrients, just a gambit of things that you would expect to see whenever you're using a very basic level of organic culture where you're not putting anything on to protect your plants or to even, in my opinion, adequately fertilize them.
I think what I'd like to do, Dr. Rush, is I'd like to show you some of those photos that we were reviewing with Ms. Odum earlier today, okay?
Sure.
And then you can highlight some of these points that you're addressing with the jury. Your Honor? Yes, of course. So, you're okay with that? We're going to go ahead and show the witness a hard copy of the digital version you're looking at earlier.
No objection.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So Dr. Rush, you have a screen there in front of you, correct?
Yes.
And this is what we marked as Exhibit 67, okay?
Yes.
And the testimony is that this is Leath amaranth.
Yes.
And that this was a photo taken after July 6th of 2021. Can you describe any conditions that you see in this photo?
Sure. Well, I mean, we've got the amaranth is paired, well, it's approaching maturity. That's the red part of it that you're looking at there. It's kind of like a grain, kind of like a sorghum grain. That's what amaranth is. And what I'm seeing here are leaves that look fairly normal. I'm seeing what appear to be in the center, lower center of chlorotic tissue, which looks like young tissue, classic iron deficiency, but it can also be brought on by viruses. And then down below you see this area here essentially looks like insects would be chewing on it.
All right. And then, Dr. Rush, do you see up here that leaf as well?
Yes.
What is that? How would you describe that?
Well, it looks like it's mechanically damaged. Again, it could be insects or some kind of, like I said, mechanical damage where brushed or whatever.
All right. And Dr. Rush, you've gone through these photos before. You're familiar with these photos. It's your opinion that these photos do not show herbicide damage, so I'm not going to ask you for each one.
Objection, leading.
Dr. Rush, do you see any herbicide damage in this photo?
No, I don't see herbicide. And I've stated before that when I looked at these before, the things I saw were the things I discussed.
Thank you. I'm going to clear that screen. Dr. Rush, this is Exhibit 68. This is described as the lilac bush that is near the back porch of Ms. Odom's property. What do you see in this photo?
Well, I see plant tissue that looks fairly normal, and I see water spotting.
And that water spotting, does that appear to be pesticide residue to you?
No, it just appears to be water spots.
Okay. Dr. Rush, this is Exhibit 69. This is described as a leaf surface from one of the plants in Ms. Odom's backyard. What do you see here?
Well, I see spots on the leaves that are most likely caused by insect damage, but could also be mechanical from the standpoint of just sandblasting.
What would cause sandblasting?
Just windblown soil.
Okay. Dr. Rush, this is Exhibit 70. This is described as a pepper plant photo that was taken out in Ms. Odom's backyard after the July of 2021 incident. What do you see here?
What I see there is stunted growth and chlorosis or yellowing. It's not a dark green like you'd expect it to be. And it's doesn't look like it's very thrifty. It's pretty small.
And in your experience, what would cause pepper plant chlorosis?
Lack of nutrients.
Dr. Rush, do you see a couple of small holes in the leaf that's front center?
Yes.
And what is that typically caused by, if you know?
Usually weevil insects.
And Dr. Rush, do you see some white residue that's on the mat underneath the plant?
Yes.
Does that appear to you to be spray, drift, or direct spray residue?
It's like salt to me.
And salt would come from what?
From the irrigation water in the soil.
And would you get salt in the irrigation water and soil if you're using a well for your source of water in this area?
Yes.
Dr. Rush, this is Exhibit 71. This is described as an apple tree out in Ms. Odom's backyard. What did you see with respect to this?
Well, first of all, it's not an apple tree. It's probably a nectarine tree. And what I'm seeing are kind of classic down here, what's called peach leaf curl, which is a disease that stone fruits get.
And how can you determine that this is not an apple tree?
Well, look at the fruit up here. This is glabrous, split, rosaceous. I mean, I found it grew nectarines for a living. So, you know, it could possibly be, it has to be a nectarine in my opinion.
All right. And any signs of herbicide damage?
Not that I can see. I see a little bit of chlorosis here and there, which again, I think is probably associated with lack of nutrition.
All right. Dr. Rush, this is Exhibit, let me clear this. This is Exhibit 72, and this was described as sage. What do you see here?
Well, I see some plants in the foreground that look really unhappy.
And if that's the sage that's unhappy, what would be an explanation in your experience?
It looks like it's fairly light textured soil. It looks to me like it's been just stretched for water.
All right. Thank you. Taking a look, Dr. Rush, at Exhibit 73. This was described as a rosemary bush, kind of near the residence and the shed area. Do you see any issues with respect to this rosemary?
Well, it's not healthy. you see that some of the older growth is senescent. It goes back to the senescence issue we were talking about.
Okay. Dr. Rush, this is Exhibit 74, and this is described as you're looking at the photo, that's a rosemary to the right, but then in the center of the photo, next to the irrigation drip tape, is hens and chicks, which Ms. Odum says she has planted there as a way to attract beneficial insects. Do you see any signs of herbicide exposure to the hens and chicks?
Well, it's in extremely poor condition, which again looks to me like it's been, hasn't had anywhere near adequate nutrition. And the soil's awfully dry around there. So it looks to me like a nutrition and irrigation and water availability issue.
All right. Dr. Rush, this is Exhibit 75. This is described as celery by Ms. Odum. Do you see, what do you see with respect to the celery in this photo?
Well, I mean, you see plants that here and foliage that looks to be dried out, and necrotic, or basically dried out and rotting away. Celery is an extremely high user of fertilizer, particularly nitrogen. Highly likely that looking at the size of these plants and that they're just not getting enough nutrients, not enough fertilizer.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Rush. This is Exhibit 76. This was described as a tomato plant.
Yep.
And what do you see with respect to this tomato plant?
Well, it appears to me to be affected by something like nematodes and a virus that causes curly leaf.
Okay. And this is a couple of the tomato fruit on that plant, Exhibit 77. Yellow with some dried leaves around them.
Right.
What do you see here?
Well, I mean, this is, when I talk about necrosis and senescence, this is necrosis and senescence. This is chlorosis, which is probably associated with nutrient availability, that is nitrogen. And the fruit are just fruit that are essentially taking whatever nutrients were in these leaves and putting it in the fruit and sacrificing the plant to make the fruit.
All right. Just a few more. Dr. Rush, this is Exhibit 78. This was described as potato plants that have wilted over. What are your observations here?
Well, it looks to me like either premature or natural senescence, where potatoes, the tops grow, tubers form, and the tops will senesce whenever the tubers are taking up the nutrients from the top down to the potatoes themselves. It just looks like, again, nutrient starved.
All right. Dr. Rush, this is Exhibit 79, and this is a zucchini squash plant with what, according to Ms. Odum, had been some green, healthy zucchinis. What do you see here?
What I see here is most commonly caused by virus. Very common.
If you're an organic farmer, can you do anything to control virus?
Boy, it's tough. Most viruses are vectored by insects, which means that insect is infected with the virus and feeds on the plant, injects the virus into the plant. So if you don't control the insects, you're not going to control the vectoring of the virus. Now, the other side of that is that viruses can be vectored at very low insect rates. You can have thrips or aphid at low infection rates, but there's still enough there to transmit the virus and cause the plants to go down because of the virus, not because of the insects. But viruses are difficult to control under conventional agriculture and even more difficult to control under organic farming.
Thank you for that explanation. Dr. Rush, taking a look at Exhibit 80, this was described as a turnip plant. What, do you see any or any observations here?
Well, I see a lot of you see the chlorosis, which I think is associated with either iron deficiency or lack of nitrogen or sulfur or both, all three. I see stippling on the leaves, which can be caused by fungal organisms. Hard to tell much else without doing an in-depth analysis.
Just a few more. Dr. Rush, this is Exhibit 81. This was described as a mustard plant. Did you make any observations with respect to this photo?
Looks like it's starved for water and nutrients.
Okay. And Dr. Rush, this is Exhibit 82. This is a cantaloupe that Ms. Odum said had died. Do you have any observations here?
You commonly see this kind of response from both fungal pathogens and viruses.
Okay. This was a non-crop photo of just a sunflower that Ms. Odum described as being affected by the exposure to the pesticide. What do you see here?
It appears to me to be, could be a wild sunflower that's, again, starved of nutrients.
Okay. And then finally, Dr. Rush, this is Exhibit 84. And this again was described as an apple tree that was completely fried by Ms. Odum's testimony.
Well, there's some, again, these really don't look like apple leaves.
Okay.
But what I'm seeing here, this one fruit, this is the kind of thing you see in the American Phytopathological Society response to the virus.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Rush. So what I want to ask you now is, as part of your work and investigation and opinions in this, did you form any opinions on whether or not you believe Ms. Odum's organic certification had been affected by any of these alleged incidents?
You know, my opinion is it was not, it has not been. Organic certification is basically a plan that you submit to a certification agency such as CCOF or California Certified Organic. And you agree to follow the rules and only use the products that are supposed to be used and not use illegal products. And despite everyone's best efforts, it's not uncommon for there to be occasional de minimis contamination of organic produce by conventional fertilizers and pesticides that are not certified or registered for use. And because of that, the U.S. Department of Agriculture, State of California, State of Nevada, and the certification agencies and the EPA have agreed that you look at the way pesticides are developed, and one of the things they do is they look at negative effects or toxicity, and they expose specimen organisms, and they look for negative effects. And they keep lowering the dose until there's no more negative effects. The dose is small enough, there's no negative effects. Then, in an abundance of caution, the regulatory agency, EPA, would say, we're going to lower that level. We're going to take 1/10 of that level. And so there's no effect at this level, and so we're going to say the maximum allowable exposure is 1/10 of that. And that means that anything that is below that level of contamination or occupancy or whatever you want to call it is not considered, it is considered safe to eat, sell, whatever you want to do. Well, because of the interfaces and the problems with organic farming versus conventional farming, and because of the things that we deal with pesticides that evaporate, lift off, and that sort of thing, the US EPA and the Department of Agriculture established a limit that said, because this cannot be avoided in all cases, we're going to set a floor that says that whatever the established residue tolerance for conventional crops are, 5% of that number is going to be acceptable for organic produce. So, if you had, say, a tolerance established for a conventional crop that was 1 part per million, it's perfectly allowable to find up to 0.05 parts per million of that same product in organic produce, and it's still considered to be certified organic and safe for use and consumption.
And you saw that information contained in Mr. Lung's report from the Nevada Department of Ag?
Yes. Well, I mean, I've been living and breathing this stuff for 20-some years, so.
Sure. You're familiar with it as well?
Yes.
And so, what does that mean then with respect to the 0.009 parts per million that was reflected in the one pepper sample?
Well, it's about 5 times lower than the, than the accepted level of 0.05 parts per million. So it's still well below the threshold for organic produce.
Thank you, Dr. Rush. Now, did you, just to follow up on one of your opinions earlier and some discussion that you had on glyphosate, what is it about glyphosate that you would not see immediate symptoms if it was exposed to a plant?
Glyphosate's a systemic herbicide. It's not, it doesn't burn, it doesn't spot. It goes into the plant and it's translocated and it affects actually the shikimic acid pathway of photosynthesis. So anyway, it essentially just shuts the plant down. It stops it from being able to produce protein in the chlorophyll. And the plant turns yellow, wilts and turns necrotic or dries out over time. And of course, it's completely dependent upon the rate of exposure. If you go out and spray a weed that's intended to be sprayed with, say, a quart per acre, you're probably going to start seeing effects in about a week. If it's drifted upon, chances are it may take longer and you may not see any symptoms at all. So, but the thing that is interesting about glyphosate is if it's there, you can find it. It's just that simple. And you can find it at levels way below the levels that would induce phytotoxicity or induce symptoms. So if you don't find it, it's not there.
Thank you, Dr. Rush. Now, in your experience, if a grower of crops believes that they have had their crops exposed to some pesticides or herbicides or insecticides for that matter, is a grower able to go out on their own, collect samples, and have that tissue tested?
Sure.
And are there laboratories that are available for growers to send their plant tissue to for a full screen of testing?
All over. There are scores and scores of laboratories on the West Coast, for instance, that do that kind of screening. And one of the good things about that kind of screening is that certainly in the last, say, 10 years or so, maybe even sooner than that, the laboratories have come up with these broad spectrum screens. And you can send one sample in, and for one charge, they will look for scores or even hundreds of different pesticides. And so you can get results back on 100 different pesticides from a single submission and a single price.
And typically, what is that submission? In your experience, you've sent samples off to the lab for testing. What does a submission like that typically cost?
Normally, they're probably in the range of $200 to $250 a sample. It can go up and down a little bit. Some of them are a little bit less than that if you want just a single product. But I'd say usually in the range of something like $250.
And Dr. Rush, based on all the work that you've done and the investigation that you performed in this matter, have you had a chance to share with us each of your opinions and the discussion and foundation for each of those opinions?
Well, I would say there's probably one exception.
Sure. And what is that?
That is the specifics of chlorpyrifos. And chlorpyrifos is an organophosphate insecticide that has a warning signal, which is next to the lowest signal for pesticide. The least is caution, and then the next one's warning, and then it goes up from there for the ones that really have high toxicity, which there aren't that many left anymore. Most high toxic pesticides are not being used. But chlorpyrifos is interesting because in my experience over the years, I dealt with many instances where chlorpyrifos was found in a neighboring crop, and the blame was always that the applicator drifted into the neighbor's crop. And it involved with several noteworthy crop loss cases where if you really look into chlorpyrifos, it is extremely volatile. It lifts off. It floats around. It fumes. And so for a long time, that information wasn't well known to the public or to the farming public. And there were lots of cases where chlorpyrifos was claimed to be drifted into a neighbor's crop. And it really turned out to be that it was post-application offsite liftoff that happened completely after the application had been made and the material had been properly deposited. So it's a very, it's one of a handful of pesticides that is problematic along those ways. And it's something that I think there were a lot of mistakes made out there where people were being accused of drifting chlorpyrifos when it was really volatility or evaporation after the fact.
And Dr. Rush, just to close the loop on chlorpyrifos, at the time it was used by my client in 2020, it was still registered for use on food crops.
Yes.
It has since been deregistered or delisted for that use.
Well, currently the EPA has rescinded all the tolerances established for food crops. It's still used, can be used. But there also is a movement by farm groups to have that overturned.
Dr. Rush, thank you so much. I do not have any additional questions.
Let me take a 15-minute recess and then we'll come back.
Thank you.
So ladies and gentlemen, jury, we're going to take a 15-minute recess. During this recess, it is your duty not to converse among yourselves or with anyone else on any subject connected with the trial. Do not communicate with anyone in any way regarding the case or its merits, either by phone, email, text, internet, or other means. Do not read, watch, or listen to any news or media accounts or commentary about the case. Do not do any research, such as consulting dictionaries, using the internet, or using reference materials. Do not make any investigation, test a theory of the case, recreate any aspect of the case, or in any other way investigate or learn about the case on your own. Additionally, it is your duty not to form or express an opinion on any subject connected with the case until it is finally submitted to you. We'll return at 3:10.
All rise.